My name is Jake. I'm 26 years old, and I share a small apartment with my buddy Mike on the outskirts of Charlotte. We're both really serious about safety, which is why right after moving in, we installed a Ring security camera and a digital keypad lock on our door, trying to be smart and cautious. Honestly, those measures made us feel pretty secure, but nothing could have prepared us for what happened with our new neighbor, Chris. About 3 months back, the family who lived down the hall moved out, and in came Chris. The first time we saw him carrying in boxes, I swear, we thought he was bringing in a small army stacks of anime figurines, posters all over the walls, Star Wars lightsabers, the whole 9 yards. Emma and I are both pretty nerdy ourselves, so we immediately thought, hey, maybe he's just a fellow geek. A few days after he'd settled in, Emma and I decided to be friendly neighbors. We put together a little welcome basket, some homemade cookies inspired by Red Dead Redemption, a few seasonal candles, a couple of random snacks, and knocked on his door. We smiled and handed it over, but he just mumbled a shy thank you and barely looked us in the eyes. That was pretty much it, and we left feeling a bit disappointed. But hey, not everyone is an extrovert, right? Maybe he was just shy. We figured it was kind of nice having a quiet neighbor for once, even if he was a little socially awkward. Things didn't stay normal for long. It started off pretty harmless, I guess, but soon it got strange. At first, it was just kind of annoying. Chris kept popping out of his apartment every time he heard us in the hallways, as if he'd been waiting there all along. He'd ask us how we were doing, if we could spare some sugar or toilet paper, or borrow a screwdriver, simple stuff, but in rapid succession. Sometimes, he'd knock and ask if we could watch his apartment for an hour while he ran errands, like he wanted us to just hang out there until he got back. We'd politely refuse, but he didn't seem to get the hint. He'd just nod silently and shuffle back to his place, only to ask again a few days later. Emma started joking that he was basically our third roommate, but I could tell she was a little creeped out too. Then, about a month after he moved in, everything went totally off the rails. One Saturday night, Emma and I had been out late celebrating near the stadium, stumbling back home around 3 a.m., a little tipsy but still in control. Just as we reached the landing between our apartment and Chris's, we froze dead in our tracks. There he was, sitting cross-legged on the hallway floor like some kind of yogi. As soon as he saw us, his face lit up like he'd been waiting for us. Then he stood and with a weirdly awkward ask said, "Hey, where have you guys been?" We told him we'd been out having fun, but he just looked worried and kept asking us to tell him next time we went out, as if he was worried sick about us. Despite our reassurance, he kept pressing. Emma was so stunned she almost started laughing, but she managed to hold it in. Chris saw her smile and his cheeks darkened red. He clearly realized she was laughing at him. Without another word, we hurried into our apartment, hearts pounding. Later that morning, when we checked the Ring footage, we saw something even more unsettling. After we'd gone inside, Chris hadn't left. Instead, he sat right back down on the hallway floor, facing our door like some kind of sentinel, and stayed there for hours from around 3:30 until nearly 6 o'clock a.m. He just sat there, staring at our door or rocking back and forth on his heels. It looked just like that creepy scene from Paranormal Activity when the camera speeds up, but the figure barely moves. It was absolutely chilling. We called the police, but they shrugged us off, said they could only do something if he made a direct threat or tried breaking into our apartment. Since he was just lurking on the landing outside our door, and we didn't have any immediate proof of danger, they told us to keep a record and contact them if it happened again. We filed a formal complaint with the apartment management too, but in the first few days, everything was quiet. No knocks, no weird hallway chats. We thought maybe he'd taken the hint and backed off, but we were dead wrong. A few weeks later, everything spiraled even further. Chris was now outside constantly, pacing the hallways, sitting outside our door for hours, mumbling strange things, sometimes loud enough for us to hear, sometimes just whispering under his breath. Emma started leaving for work an hour early just to avoid him, sneaking out like she was escaping a prison. I worked from home, so I was basically trapped. Every time I opened the door to take out the trash or grab a package, there he'd be, calling out casual things like, "Hey, you look nice today," or "Why don't you come hang out with me?" But there was an unmistakable undercurrent of menace. Whenever no one was around, he'd say things way over the line. Once, in so many words, he told me if we didn't come over to his apartment, he'd kill us in our sleep, so quiet no one would hear. I was so angry, but I was too stunned to come up with a response. I just dashed back inside, locked the door, and broke down crying. We didn't know what to do anymore, and the notes started showing up. Love letters taped on our door, slipped under our car windshields, sometimes stuck to the windshield wipers. They were totally unhinged. One said he wanted us to be his wives, and he gleefully mentioned Emma being his sister wife. Another note was gruesome. I can't repeat some of the graphic stuff he wrote, but it was disturbing beyond belief. His obsession was terrifying, and it was clear he was watching us. Soon after, he installed his own Ring doorbell, aimed directly at our door. We caught on when we noticed a new note waiting every morning. "Miss you today." The worst was when we realized he'd set up the camera so he could see inside. His creepy notes kept appearing, and one night I woke up at 2 a.m. to a faint scratching sound, like someone dragging something along the street below. I froze and peeked out the window. I swear I saw shadows move near the streetlight, like a figure lurking just out of sight. I convinced myself it was just a trick of the light, but I couldn't sleep that night. We called the cops again about his threats, but since they only had his notes and no physical evidence, they said their hands were tied. They just advised us to get a restraining order, which was a long process with no guarantee of immediate safety. Eventually, we decided to bail. We broke our lease to get out of there. It cost a lot to move, yes, but the peace of mind was worth it. We barely slept that first night in the new place, a quiet apartment on the second floor of a building with no shared walls, no looming neighbors. That night I slept with the window open just a crack, feeling the cool breeze, finally relaxed for the first time in months. We started fresh, and life felt normal again until Emma moved out to live with her new boyfriend, now husband. We're still friends, but I don't think I'll ever forget what it was like living next to Chris. That whole nightmare. And there's another story, one that sits heavy with me even now, about a different neighbor. When I was in 5th grade, a family moved into the trailer next door owned by my grandpa. They had 2 kids, Jessica and her little brother, Jack, both around my age. Jessica was friendly, fun to hang around, but Jack, not so much. That kid was a different story altogether. He showed up at our house one day, unannounced, with a bow and arrow, not a toy, an honest hunting bow. Turns out, his dad hunted deer with it and was showing Jack how to use it. You can guess what happened. I never even saw Jack aiming, just that sudden tension when he pulled back the arrow and pointed it at my little brother. With that little tip, he could have killed him. Everyone was in shock, and my mom lost her mind. She dragged us inside and told us to stay away from them forever. The thing is, Jessica and Jack kept coming over after that. They knocked, called our names, but we just hide inside. Jack's behavior was disturbing. No shirt, no shoes, snot always smeared across his face, just wandering around like he didn't care. My mom caught him peeing in her flower bed more times than I can count, and he'd grin and run off. One day, he yanked the tassels off my bike while I was riding, almost made me fall. We didn't think much of him, even when we saw him peering over the fence at our yard. But then the night came that made everything worse. Jack and Jessica brought over that bow again, but this time, they meant business. Jack aimed that arrow directly at my brother's head. The tip was razor sharp. He just stood there, wide-eyed, holding it. I yelled at him to stop, but Jack laughed as if it was a game. He didn't shoot, but he didn't lower the weapon either. My mom saw what was happening, stormed out, and dragged us inside while completely losing it. After that, they weren't allowed around anymore. But for weeks, they kept bothering us, knocking on the door, calling our names, just to spy on us when we didn't come out. Jessica's voice was tiny and confused, asking why we wouldn't show ourselves. Jack would pound harder, yelling nonsense. It was heartbreaking, honestly, and it went on for a long time until they just disappeared. Years later, I drove past that old trailer, now gone, with the yard all overgrown. I never forgot that pile of charred stuff in the backyard, or Jack's eyes, those shifty, wild eyes when he aimed that arrow. I wondered what it was like for Jessica living there in that place, with parents who clearly didn't care. It's probably better that way, that they're gone. One night some years later, I swear I saw Jack near my house, just his messy hair and skinny frame standing in the yard, staring at my window. I thought I'd imagined it at first, but I could swear he was out there. I locked all the windows that night, and it took me forever to fall asleep, feeling terrible for him but mostly just scared. I think about them sometimes and wonder how they turned out. Jack, the wild kid, did he have a chance? Jessica, where is she now? All I know is that they're caught in a haunted place in my mind, places I'd almost forgot, but the fear still lingers. And then there's my story about my dad and the guy I never saw but knew was dangerous. I lived in a basement apartment in a small town in Illinois. It was tiny, with just one little window near my bed under the upstairs house. The lady who owned the place, Sarah, she was always quiet, her and her two kids with her ex, Ryan. Ryan was a nightmare, always drunk, angry, and loud. When she finally left him after 2 years, it just left me and Ryan. That guy was hostile from day one. I remember once accidentally tossing an Amazon box into his recycling bin, not breaking it down, and he freaked out, calling me a stupid mother effer and ranting about trash. That was just the start. Things only got worse. I worked nights, so I'd get home late, and one night I pulled into the driveway around midnight. Ryan's car was there, and I knew he'd probably be asleep, so I thought I'd park behind him. But at 12:30 a.m., just as I was trying to sleep, I heard him yelling, not at anyone, just screaming my name and pounding on my door. He was cursing, demanding I come out. I finally dragged myself outside and moved my car, but he followed, ranting and calling me terrible names. When he raised his fist like he was about to hit me, I stared him down and said, "Oh, going to hit a woman now, huh?" He sneered and kept going, but I knew I couldn't stay. I started planning my escape, moving at the end of August, but it was too expensive to do immediately. Then, one day, I saw a for sale sign in his yard. A couple of weeks later, his truck was gone and the house was empty. Kind of like a miracle, honestly. My dad said he'd moved out of state, or so we thought. I didn't care as long as he was gone. My nightmares eased over time, but I'd still wake up sometimes, listening for footsteps or strange noises. He'd left behind scratches on the window glass like someone dragged a sharp tool across it. I eventually moved away, found a new place on the second floor of a quiet building, and for the first time in forever, I finally felt safe again. Now I sleep with the windows open, unnoticed traffic, no more nightmares. Ryan's gone from my life, and I can finally breathe. But I'll never forget the shadow he cast, or how close that danger was to me, the fact that someone could have slipped into my house, and I'd never even known. Sometimes I wonder if he ever tried to come back, if he's even still out there. And sometimes I just wish I could forget all of it, but deep down, I know some things stay with you forever, no matter how much you want to leave them behind.